We just finished our first week of residency in Schiedam, the Stedelijk Museum in Schiedam, where I was working with some colleagues of mine. And we basically just tried to build little treasure hunts, or that was the kind of frame with which we were working under. So we tried to build alternative parcours through the building. We started to look at the potentials for treasures, like where in this building do we find the treasures, and what are considered treasures, and could we possibly propose other treasures or other highlights? And we also played with the scale of those. So, like, can a tiny little gesture or a tiny little animal figure, get the same amount of attention as, a massive piece of art which is meant to be watched there. So just looking at these hierarchies of or priorities of the room. Through all of these practical experiments that we went through throughout the week, two questions really kind of reveal themselves. One is whether we are trying to blend in or whether we are trying to stand out. Like, are we trying to use the environment of the museum and the convention and the normative behavior as the grounds for whatever we are doing, or are we trying to disrupt that environment, And the second question that really kind of stood out for me was, if the museum is a space where you come to look at stuff, how can our choreographic proposal encourage looking for something? So looking for something rather than looking at something. And that's where the idea of the treasure hunt also kind of comes, the investigative, the searching for alternative treasures. And through that curiosity, propose a different hierarchy of the room, what is given attention and what is not given attention. I would love for people to want to look for something rather than only come to look at something. Well, as it was the first week of residency, the first week in the museum, it was important for me to be able to observe also, and to be able to develop around or elaborate around my ideas together with some colleagues of mine that I trust and that I feel safe around, and so I invited a few of my colleagues to join me for a few of the days in the museum, and together we ended up speaking a lot about consent. We are working in a public space which includes an audience already, and it's important for me that whatever we are proposing, that people feel that people are given agency to either accept or reject that proposal, and so that came up as a topic that we discussed as a premise for any work we will do later in the museum. I mean, I think it's important. Well, if people embark on a treasure hunt, they would have to want to find the treasures. And of course, our work is partly about stimulating that curiosity. But it's important for me that our proposal contains enough agency and room for people to participate on their own terms. If people don't want to take part and I still have to be there and propose something because that's my job, how can I respect people who don't want to participate or are there for another experience? And how can I coexist with their expectation? And that is essentially about territory. Suddenly I own that room when I propose something out of the norm. And how can what I propose be respectful to the people who don't want to engage with that proposal because they are there for another experience?